Chapter 1. The Girl Who Wore the Face of Freedom. The neon lights of downtown Seattle shimmered on the rain-slicked pavement, casting sharp reflections in puddles. Skylar Reeves pulled her leather jacket tighter around her, the faint scent of cigarette smoke and wet asphalt clinging to her. Her light pink hair, cut just above her shoulders, caught the glow of a nearby street lamp, making it almost radiant. At 24, she walked through the world like a storm restrained in human form. Wild, defiant, but purposeful. Her boots splashed through a puddle as she headed toward Ink and Iron, the tattoo parlor where she spent most of her nights. Inside, the air buzzed with the hum of tattoo machines and the low thrum of a lo-fi playlist. Skylar's workspace was a shrine to her chaos. Gritty sketches of thorny roses, skeletal crows, and dystopian skylines pinned to the walls. A half-drunk cup of coffee perched precariously atop a stack of underground comics she had drawn herself. She wasn't just a tattoo artist. She was a storyteller, etching rebellion into skin and paper. Her clients, punks, drifters, and sometimes buttoned-up office workers craving a taste of the wild, came for her art as much as her aura. Skylar didn't smile easily, didn't flirt, didn't pretend. Her gray eyes, sharp as shattered glass, kept the world at arm's length. "Hey, Sky!" called Mia, her best friend and the shop's piercer, from across the room. Mia was all curves and glitter, her nose ring glinting as she leaned on the counter. "You coming to the bar with us tonight? It's been forever since you let loose." Skylar smirked, wiping down her station. "Nah, got a deadline on the next comic panel. Besides, bars are just germ factories for bad decisions." Mia rolled her eyes. "You're 24, not 40. Live a little." "I've lived enough," Skylar replied, her voice low but firm. She lived on her own terms, always had. Growing up in a string of foster homes had taught her early that the only person she could rely on was herself. She'd clawed her way out of that life, building a world of her own with ink and grit, and she kept her body her own. No boyfriends, no hookups, no mess. Not because she was afraid, but because no one had ever been worth the risk. To her, purity wasn't a virtue, it was a choice, a boundary she defined herself. Mia sighed, tossing a rag at her. "Fine, but I'm dragging you to the Rusty Nail later. You owe me for covering your ass with that client last week." Skylar caught the rag midair, the corner of her mouth twitching. "All right, but if another creep comes after you, you're on your own." The Rusty Nail was a dive bar 2 blocks from the shop, its walls plastered with peeling band posters and its air thick with the scent of cheap whiskey. Skylar leaned against the bar, sipping a lemon soda, eyes scanning the crowd. Mia had already hit the dance floor, laughing with a group of regulars. Skylar didn't mind the noise or the chaos. She just preferred to observe, like a lone wolf circling the campfire. That's when she saw him. In the back corner booth sat a man alone, his presence like a black hole sucking in light. He was older, maybe early 30s, with slicked back black hair, a jawline like a blade, and eyes that seemed to dissect everything they touched. His charcoal suit was perfectly tailored, radiating wealth, but the way he sat, still, predatory, radiated power. He wasn't drinking, wasn't talking, just watching, and now he was watching her. Skylar didn't flinch. She stared back, her expression a silent dare. "What do you want?" Most men would have looked away, intimidated by her energy. He didn't. Instead, a slow smirk tugged at his lips, like he'd just found something worth chasing. She turned back to her drink, ignoring the prickling at the nape of her neck. Men like him, rich, smug, were trouble she didn't need. She'd seen enough of their kind, the type who thought everything had a price, including people. Trouble came an hour later. Mia, tipsy and giggling, returned to the bar just as a bulky guy in a flannel shirt stepped in close, his hand sliding around her waist. Mia froze, her smile vanishing. "Back off, asshole," she snapped. "Come on, babe," he slurred, leaning closer. "Just having some fun." Skylar was off her stool in a second, blood boiling. She wedged herself between them, her 5'6" frame radiating threat. "She said back off," she said, voice low, each word like a blade. "Are you deaf?" The guy laughed, breath reeking of beer. What's this, your guard dog? He reached out like he meant to shove her aside. Big mistake. Skylar grabbed his wrist, twisted hard, and drove a punch straight into his nose. The crunch of bone was drowned by his scream as he stumbled back, blood pouring down his chin. The bar went silent for a beat, then erupted into shouts and cheers. Mia gaped, half laughing, half horrified. Sky, what the hell? Mia grabbed her hand, dragging her toward the door as the bartender started yelling about calling the cops. Skylar didn't resist, heart pounding with adrenaline and a dark satisfaction. She'd done what needed to be done. She always did. Outside, the cool night air slapped her face, grounding her. Mia was ranting about Skylar being crazy but badass when Skylar felt it again. That feeling of being watched. She turned, and he was there, the man from the booth, standing beneath a street lamp just yards away. Hands in his pockets, expression unreadable, but his eyes burned with something she couldn't name. Curiosity, respect, desire. Whatever it was, it raised goosebumps on her skin. Who's that? Mia whispered, following her gaze. No idea, Skylar muttered, but she didn't look away. Neither did he. Damien Cade hadn't planned on going to a place like the Rusty Nail. Dive bars weren't his scene. Too loud, too messy, too human. At 32, he preferred the sterile calm of boardrooms or the controlled chaos of his penthouse office at Cade Enterprises. His world was one of calculated risks and ruthless efficiency, where failing companies were bought, gutted, and reborn under his command. Emotion was a weakness, attachment, a liability. He'd learned that lesson long ago. But tonight he needed a change. A client had insisted on meeting here, a tech startup burnout circling the drain, and Damien humored him. The deal was done in 10 minutes. The startup was now his, ready for dismantling or reinvention. But he stayed, lingering in the shadows, watching the crowd like a scientist studying specimens. Then he saw her. She didn't fit. Not the giggling girls in tight dresses, not the swaggering guys chasing their next high. She was different. Pink hair, leather jacket, the way she stood, like she owed the world nothing. When their eyes met, he felt it, a jolt he couldn't explain. She didn't blush or look away. She challenged him, her gaze a dare. It stirred something in him, something he'd buried long ago. When she dropped the drunk with a single punch, Damien's curiosity sharpened into fascination. She wasn't just defiant. She was precise, controlled, a blade wrapped in rebellion. He wanted to know her. No, he needed to. Now as she stood outside looking right at him, he made a decision. Damien Cade didn't believe in fate, but he believed in opportunity. And this girl, whoever she was one he wasn't going to miss. He stepped forward, polished shoes silent on the wet street. Impressive, he said, voice low, smooth with a cold edge. Not many people can end a fight that fast. Skylar tilted her head, guarded. Not many people are dumb enough to start one with me. He chuckled, a deep, dangerous sound. I'm Damien Cade, he said. No title, no context. He didn't need it. His name carried weight, and he knew it. Skylar Reeves, she replied without hesitation, no awe in her tone. And I don't do small talk. Then I'll be brief. He stepped closer, close enough to smell her. Leather, ink, and something sweet, like jasmine. You're not like the rest of this place. I want to know why. Her lips curved, not a smile but a smirk. You don't know me, and you don't get to. Have a nice night, Damien Cade. With that, she turned, grabbed Mia's hand and walked away, boots splashing through the rain. Damien watched her go, heart steady but mind spinning. For the first time in years, he felt something close to anticipation. Skylar Reeves. He would find her again, and next time, he wouldn't let her walk away so easily. Chapter 2. The Man in the Shadows. Damien Cade sat in his penthouse office, the lights of Seattle's skyscrapers streaming through the glass walls, casting a cold glow across his chiseled face. The ebony desk in front of him was bare, except for a laptop and an untouched glass of whiskey, an exact reflection of his personality. Organized, controlled, unyielding. But tonight, his mind wasn't on numbers or deals. It was consumed by a name, Skylar Reeves. He couldn't shake the image of her, light pink hair, dagger eyes, and the clean, swift punch that floored a drunken man. She wasn't the kind of woman who usually caught his attention. The women in his world were pawns, beautiful, predictable, eager to trade his attention for a taste of the spotlight. Skylar was different. She didn't need him, didn't want him, and that made him restless, a foreign feeling, like fire licking the ice he had built around himself for years. Damien took a sip of whiskey, the burn sliding down his throat. He had lived 32 years by one rule: control or be controlled. Emotion was a luxury, a weakness he'd eradicated the moment he watched his father, a failed businessman, crumble over love. But Skylar, with her wild defiance, had awakened something in him. Not love. He wasn't that naive. It was need, a desire to possess what couldn't easily be held. He opened his laptop and fired off a quick email to Ethan, his most trusted assistant. Find everything on Skylar Reeves, every detail. Fast. Ethan knew how to work. Silent, efficient, no questions asked. Damien didn't need to explain why he wanted the information. He just needed it. Within 2 days, Ethan sent a report. Skylar Reeves, 24, orphaned, grew up in the foster system, no family, no debt, no criminal record, makes a living as a tattoo artist at Ink and Iron and freelances as an underground comic illustrator under the alias Raven, lives alone in a small apartment in Capitol Hill. No social media presence, no digital footprint. One detail made Damien raise an eyebrow. She had never been in a serious relationship, and according to acquaintances, she kept everyone at arm's length. A wall, Ethan wrote. No one's ever gotten past. Damien closed the file and leaned back in his chair. She was a puzzle, and he hated puzzles without solutions. Yet he couldn't deny the flicker of excitement in his chest. Skylar wasn't someone to bribe or manipulate. She was a challenge, and Damien Cade had never lost a challenge. His mind shifted to the upcoming virtual reality game Cade Enterprises was launching, a cyberpunk world full of violence and art. The creative team was struggling with the visual concept. They needed a fresh perspective, something bold and original. Skylar, with her raw style and rebellious spirit, was the perfect fit. That would be the excuse to draw her into his world. But deep down, he knew the truth. He wanted her closer, not just for her talent, but because she made him feel alive. Skylar woke in her small apartment, weak sunlight filtering through the curtains. She lay on her mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling, her mind still echoing with images of Damien Cade. His eyes, cold yet burning, like they could see straight through her. She hated that. She'd spent her life building walls, making sure no one ever touched the scars she kept hidden. The years of abandonment, the cruel taunts, the times she had to defend herself. Damien, with his expensive suit and dangerous smile, was a threat to her control. But she wasn't afraid, just cautious. She got up, made coffee, and checked her email. A message from an unfamiliar address. Cade Enterprises, inviting her to discuss a collaborative opportunity for a game project. The invitation was signed by Damien Cade. Skylar scoffed and tossed her phone onto the table. Who did he think she was? Some puppet he could pull strings on? She deleted the email without replying. She didn't need his money, his attention. She had Ink and Iron, she had her comic pages, she had freedom. That was enough. But her freedom didn't last long. The next night, when she arrived at the tattoo parlor, she found the glass door shattered, her sketches torn to pieces, and the word whore spray-painted in red across the wall. Skylar's heart pounded, not with fear, but with rage. Mia arrived moments later, gasping, hand over her mouth. Sky, what the hell? Who did this? Skylar didn't answer. She knelt, picking up a shredded piece of a drawing, one she'd made for a client. Anger flared, but beneath it was something familiar, the pain of being violated. She'd built this place from nothing, made it her home. Now it was ruined, and she had no idea why. The police came, but only took notes and promised to look into it. Skylar knew better. They wouldn't do anything. When Mia suggested calling someone for help, Skylar shook her head. I'll handle it. But a thought flickered in her mind. Damien Cade. He had found her. He wanted her to work for him. Could this be his doing? A way to force her hand? She didn't want to believe it, but doubt gnawed at her all night. The next morning, she looked up the address for Cade Enterprises, pulled on her leather jacket, and took the bus to the financial district. Damien's building loomed tall, glass and steel, a tower of power. Skylar entered the lobby, ignoring the receptionist's curious stare, and demanded to see Damien Cade. She was led to the top floor, where Damien was waiting in his office. He stood as she entered, his navy suit hugging his frame, his eyes gleaming like he'd been waiting for this moment. Skylar, he said, his voice deep, I knew you'd come. Don't flatter yourself, she cut in, walking straight up to his desk. My shop was trashed. If this is your idea of pushing me into a job, you picked the wrong girl to mess with. Damien frowned. For the first time, she saw a flicker of genuine surprise on his face. Vandalized, he said. I had nothing to do with that, but I want to know what happened. He gestured for her to sit, but she stayed standing, eyes locked on his. I'm not here to play games, she said. So say it. What do you want from me? Damien leaned forward, fingers steepled. I want your talent. My game project needs someone like you. Someone with an edge, who isn't afraid to break rules. But I won't lie. I also want to know who you are, Skylar Reeves, and I always get what I want. Skylar let out a dry laugh, but her heart beat faster. He wasn't hiding his intentions, and that blunt honesty was both terrifying and intriguing. I'm not a trophy for your shelf, she said, but if you can prove you had nothing to do with the attack, I'll consider your offer. Just consider it. Damien smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. Deal. But you'll see, Skylar, I'm not your enemy. I might be the best thing that's ever happened to you. She turned without replying, but as she walked out of his office, she felt his gaze trailing after her, like a promise or a warning. Chapter 3. The Unexpected Deal. Skylar stood in front of the shattered glass door of Ink and Iron, the smell of spray paint and scorched wood still heavy in the air. The police had come and gone, leaving behind a useless report and a vague promise to follow up. Mia had tried to stay and help clean up, but Skylar had sent her home. She needed space to face this wreckage alone. She knelt down and picked up a torn sketch, a crow with broken wings, the dried ink blotched like blood. The tattoo parlor wasn't just her workplace. It was where she had rebuilt herself, one design, one line at a time. Now it was ruined, and the anger inside her tangled with a fear she didn't want to admit. Fear that she might lose everything all over again. Damien Cade. His name circled her mind like an unwelcome melody. He had denied any involvement in the vandalism, and while logic warned her not to trust him, she had no evidence to the contrary. He had offered her an opportunity, a job, a way out. But Skylar wasn't naive. Men like Damien didn't give anything away for free. He wanted her, not just for her talent, but for something deeper, darker. And the scariest part? A small, repressed part of her wanted to know where he might lead her. She grabbed her phone, found Damien's email, and replied with a curt message. Meet me at the shop, 10 a.m. tomorrow. No greeting, no thanks. If she was going to step into his world, it would be on her terms. Damien arrived exactly on time, stepping out of a sleek black Bentley, his dark gray suit accentuating his tall frame. He stood outside Ink and Iron, eyes sweeping over the broken glass and scattered debris, with no surprise, no pity. Skylar, in a leather jacket and ripped jeans, stood with arms crossed in the doorway, watching him. She didn't want him to see her as weak. She didn't want him thinking she needed saving. Punctual, she said flatly. Thought billionaires were too busy for this. Damien smirked, stepping closer. I am busy, but you're worth making time for. Skylar rolled her eyes, though her heart beat faster. He had a way of speaking, direct, dangerous, as if every word was part of a calculated move. Let's cut to it, she said. What do you want me to do? And what do I get? Damien gestured for her to go inside. They sat on two worn armchairs amid the chaos of the shop. He pulled a folder from his jacket and slid it toward her. My virtual reality project, Eclipse, A cyberpunk world where players survive in a crumbling city. My design team is good, but they lack soul. I want you as the creative consultant to lead the visual direction, characters, environments, the whole aesthetic. 3 months. Do it well, and you'll have enough to rebuild this place, or anything you want. Skylar flipped through the folder, glancing over rough sketches and detailed notes. The project was huge, bigger than anything she'd ever worked on, but she didn't let herself get swept up. She looked up, meeting his eyes. How much? $1 million, Damien said without blinking. Half up front, half upon completion. The number staggered her, but she didn't let it show. $1 million could rebuild Ink and Iron, clear any debts, even fund her own comic studio. But what was the real cost? She knew men like Damien. They never paid without expecting control in return. And if I say no, she asked, then you'll stay here, he said, his voice darkening, picking up pieces, wondering what the next attack will take from you. But I know you, Skylar. You're not someone who settles for defeat. She gave a dry laugh, but his words struck a nerve. He was right, and she hated that. She couldn't let Ink and Iron die, couldn't let her past drag her down again, but she also couldn't let him think she was easy to manipulate. I have conditions, she said, her tone sharp as a blade. I work for you, but you don't touch me. No flirting, no games, no bullshit. If you cross the line, I walk. Damien tilted his head as if sizing up an opponent. Then he nodded. Agreed. But you'll find, Skylar, I don't need to force anyone. They choose me. Confident, huh? She smirked. Keep dreaming. They shook hands, and as his palm touched hers, a jolt shot through her body. His hand was strong, warm, and she pulled away quicker than necessary. He smiled as if he knew exactly what she was thinking. 3 weeks later, Skylar walked into Cade Enterprises headquarters with a backpack slung over one shoulder, her pink hair tied up. Damien's design team, a group of young creatives surrounded by laptops and coffee cups, stared at her like she'd just landed from another planet. She wore a punk band t-shirt, cargo pants, and old boots, completely out of place in the glass and steel environment of the corporation. But she didn't care. She was here to work, not to fit in. Damien introduced her to the team, his voice deep and commanding. This is Skylar Reeves. She'll lead the visual direction for Eclipse. She doesn't work the way you do, and that's exactly why I hired her. Listen to her, learn from her, or leave. Skylar raised an eyebrow, surprised by his bluntness, but she quickly took over the conference room, spreading her sketches across the table. Characters with piercing eyes, ruined cities cloaked in smoke and neon. She spoke about her vision, a world where beauty and violence intertwine, where every character carries a story. The room fell silent, then burst with questions. She answered sharply without sugarcoating, quick to shut down any idea she found weak or cliché. Damien watched from the back of the room, eyes fixed on her. She drove him crazy, not because she was talented, but because she never played by his rules. When he suggested the protagonist should be sexier, she shot it down. Sexy doesn't keep you alive in a world like Eclipse. Strength does. When he asked her to work late, she replied, I'm not your employee. I'm your partner. I work on my schedule. Every word from her was a blow to his control, but instead of anger, he found himself captivated. Skylar, meanwhile, was struggling with herself. Working with Damien was a constant test. He was smart, sharp, and always knew how to push her boundaries. There were moments in the heat of creative debate when she caught his gaze, not the gaze of a CEO, but of a man looking at her like she was the answer to a question he'd never dared ask. It scared her. She had promised herself no one would touch her heart, but every day with Damien, the walls she'd built trembled. One late evening, after the team had left, Skylar stayed behind in the design room, sketching on her tablet. Damien walked in, no suit jacket, sleeves rolled up, a coffee in hand. Not tired? He asked, setting the cup down in front of her. No more than you, she replied without looking up. Why are you still here? Don't billionaires have parties to attend? He chuckled softly, sitting beside her. I'd rather be here. Watching you work reminds me the world still has things worth fighting for. Skylar paused, looking at him. His words were so sincere they unsettled her. "Don't do that," she said quietly. "Don't pretend you care. We have a deal, remember?" Damien leaned in, close enough that she caught the scent of his cologne, sandalwood and smoke. "I'm not pretending, Skylar, and I haven't forgotten the deal, but I can't stop wanting you." She stood abruptly, heart racing. "Don't cross the line, Damien." He didn't follow as she walked out, but his gaze followed her, like a promise or a threat. Chapter 4. The First Night Together. Rain poured over the Cascade Mountains like a gray curtain, wind howling through the pine trees, shaking the SUV where Damien and Skylar sat. The business trip to a design studio on the outskirts of Seattle was supposed to be a one-day affair, but an unexpected storm had turned the mountain road into a muddy river. Damien sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the wheel, his expression calm but his eyes sharp, as if he were daring the storm itself. Skylar in the passenger seat, arms crossed, stared out the window. Her pink hair was soaked from when they had to stop to check the tire, and her leather jacket was smeared with mud. "We can't keep going," Damien said, his voice deep but firm. "The road ahead is blocked by a landslide. There's a roadside inn a few miles back. We'll stay there until the storm passes." Skylar frowned, clearly not thrilled by the idea. Being stuck in a confined space with Damien, with no way out, was a challenge she wasn't prepared for. 3 weeks working with him had already left her exhausted, not because of the work, but because of the way he looked at her, the quiet way he chipped at the walls she'd built. But she had no choice. "Fine," she said flatly. "But if there's only one room, you sleep on the floor." Damien smirked, a quick flash of amusement. "You really do know how to make things difficult, Skylar." The inn was an old wooden lodge nestled beneath towering trees, soft yellow light glowing from the windows. The innkeeper, an elderly woman with silver hair, handed them the key to the only room left. "Only one bed," she said, eyes twinkling, as if she knew something they didn't. Skylar shot Damien a warning glance, but he only shrugged, his expression innocent. The room was small, just enough for a double bed, a wooden table, and a crackling fireplace. Skylar tossed her backpack into the corner, stripped off her wet jacket, and hung it near the fire. She wore a fitted black t-shirt, revealing the tattoos along her arms, a crow flying across a starry sky, a thorned rose curled around a dagger. Damien stood near the door, removing his suit jacket, his white dress shirt clinging from the rain, highlighting the solid lines of his body. She tried not to look, but his gaze, as always, felt like it pierced right through her. "I'll sleep by the fire," Skylar said, grabbing a blanket from the bed and laying it on the floor. "You get the bed." Damien frowned. "Don't be ridiculous. The floor's freezing and hard. I'm not letting you sleep down there." "You don't let me do anything," she cut in sharply. "I decide." He stepped closer, closer than she wanted, and for the first time she saw a flicker of frustration in his eyes. "Skylar, you don't have to prove anything to me. I respect your boundaries, but I won't let you punish yourself just to keep your distance." She opened her mouth to argue, but something in his voice, rare sincerity, stopped her. She gave a reluctant nod. "Fine, but you stay on your side of the bed, and keep your hands to yourself." He chuckled softly, the sound low and warm, unsettling her. "I'm always on my best behavior, unless you don't want me to be." She glared at him, but her heart raced. She hated how he made her feel out of control, like standing on the edge of a cliff, one misstep from falling. Night deepened, the rain tapping against the roof like an endless lullaby. Skylar lay on the bed, a careful space between her and Damien, but the heat from his body still seeped toward her. She tried not to think about it, tried to focus on the sound of the fire, but sleep pulled her under, and with it, the shadows of her past. In her dream, she was 12 again, standing in the dark kitchen of a foster home. Her foster father, breath thick with alcohol, gripped her wrist and whispered words that made her skin crawl. "You think you're special? You're nothing?" She tried to run, but the floor turned to mud, pulling her down. His laughter echoed, mingling with the sound of the storm. Skylar jolted awake, breath ragged, sweat running down her forehead. She sat up, hugging her knees, fighting the tears. She hated this weakness, hated how the past still clung to her like a ghost she couldn't exorcise. "Skylar!" Damien's voice was deep and gentle, cutting through the dark. He sat up, the firelight softening the sharp edges of his face. "Are you okay?" She shook her head, afraid to speak, afraid the words would break her. He hesitated, then slowly extended his hand, like he was afraid she'd bolt. "I'm here," he said. "You're not alone." Those words, simple, heavy, broke something inside her. She didn't think. She just moved, leaning into him. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly, asking nothing, expecting nothing. She buried her face in his chest, breathing in the scent of sandalwood and rain, feeling safe for the first time in years. Then, without knowing who moved first, their lips met. The kiss was slow, tentative, like they were afraid to shatter it, but it deepened quickly, hungry and fierce, as if both had been holding back too long. His fingers tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, and she responded with equal urgency, her nails grazing his back. But when he began to lift her shirt, she stopped him, breath shaky. "Wait," she whispered, her eyes locking with his. She didn't love him. She couldn't. Not after everything she'd been through. But she wanted this. Not for him, for herself. She wanted to prove that her body was hers, that she could choose, that she was in control. "I want this, but not because of you, because of me." Damien looked at her, eyes dark and unreadable, as if he understood the things she hadn't said. "Skylar," he said, voice husky, "if you want to stop, I'll stop. Anytime." She shook her head and pulled him back. "Don't stop." That night, in a tiny room amid the storm, they came together. It wasn't about love, it wasn't blind lust. It was liberation. For Skylar, it was the first time, and she chose it. Not out of fear, not out of submission, but as a declaration that her body was hers and hers alone. For Damien, it was the moment he realized he didn't just want to own her. He wanted to understand her, to be part of the world she had fought so hard to create. The next morning, the rain had stopped, leaving behind a pale gray sky. Skylar woke first, her eyes drifting to Damien, still asleep, his face more peaceful than she had ever seen it. She didn't feel regret, but she didn't feel attachment either. She had done what she needed. Now she needed distance. Quietly, she got dressed, grabbed her backpack, and slipped out without looking back. When Damien woke, he would find an empty bed. And somewhere inside, he already knew Skylar Reeves was not someone easily kept. But he also knew deep down he wouldn't stop trying. Skylar stepped into the morning chill, breathing in the crisp air, feeling something new, freedom. She didn't belong to Damien. She didn't belong to anyone. But for the first time, she felt like she might finally belong to herself. Chapter 5. I don't need love, I want power. Pale morning light filtered through the pines, casting a thin layer of mist over the mountain lodge. Skylar stood on the porch, backpack slung over her shoulder, her breath visible in the crisp air. She glanced back at the room one last time. Damien still asleep, his face peaceful, almost vulnerable in the soft light. Last night she had given him a part of herself, not out of love, not from weakness, but to prove that she had control over her own body and choices. But now, with the storm gone and reality settling in, she knew she had to leave. Not because she was afraid, but because she couldn't let anyone, not even Damien, be the one to hold her back. She stepped down the gravel road, her boots crunching against the dirt, leaving no note behind. Damien Cade, with all his power and charm, was not her destination. He was a challenge, a detour, but not her whole world. Skylar had spent too long in cages. Cages of the past, cages built by people who tried to control her. Now she wanted something bigger, power. Not Damien's kind of power, built on wealth and manipulation, but her own, the power to shape her own life. Damien woke when the sunlight touched his face. He reached out to the other side of the bed but found only cold, empty sheets. Skylar was gone. No note, no trace, like she had never been there. He sat up, a tightness in his chest that he didn't want to name. Emptiness. He was used to controlling everything. Companies, people, even his own emotions. But Skylar, with her reckless freedom and razor-sharp boundaries, had broken through that. Last night, when she gave herself to him, He had foolishly thought it was a beginning. Now he realized it was only a moment, and she had chosen to walk away. His hand clenched the bedsheet, anger flaring beneath something deeper. He didn't love her. Damien Cade didn't believe in love. But he needed her, not just because she challenged him, but because she made him feel human again, something more than the machine he'd become. He stood, dressed, and called for his driver. Skylar could run, but he wouldn't let her disappear. Not this time. Skylar returned to Seattle and stepped into ink and iron with a new mindset. The shop was still a wreck, shattered glass, walls scarred by red spray paint, but she no longer saw it as a failure. It was an opportunity. She called Mia and asked her to contact a contractor to begin repairs. "I'll pay for it," she said, voice steady, "but I want it better than before. Not just a tattoo shop. I want a space for art, for people like me." Mia, surprised by her resolve, nodded. "You've changed, Sky. What happened?" Skylar didn't answer. She couldn't explain that one night with Damien had made one thing clear. She didn't just want to survive, she wanted to conquer. She had seen Damien's world. Money, power, boardrooms where decisions shaped industries. She didn't want to be a piece of that world. She wanted to build her own, one where she made the rules. She returned to work with the Cade Enterprises team, but now she was more than a creative consultant. She led. When a designer pitched a bland concept, she shut it down without hesitation. "We're not making space for mediocrity. Eclipse has to be a world that makes players feel, not another copy of what's been done." The team began to respect her, not just for her talent, but because she wasn't afraid to challenge even Damien himself. Damien, meanwhile, battled his own instincts. Every time he saw Skylar, he felt the pull, wanting to draw her close, knowing that pressure would only push her away. He invited her to an international conference in London, where Eclipse would be presented to major investors. "I want you there," he said in a meeting, eyes fixed on her. "As the creative voice of this project, you are its soul." Skylar raised an eyebrow. She saw through him instantly. This wasn't just about business. It was his way of keeping her close. A part of her wanted to refuse, to sever the invisible thread between them. But another part, the part that craved power and recognition, said yes. "I'll go," she said, "but not for you, for me." The conference in London was a different world. Luxurious meeting rooms, tailored suits, handshakes worth millions. Skylar walked in wearing a sleek black jumpsuit, her pink hair tied high, and a "don't you dare apologize for me" attitude. She didn't try to blend in. She stood out, and she knew it. Damien introduced her to investors, but she quickly took over the conversation, presenting her vision for Eclipse with such clarity and conviction that the room went silent. "Ms. Reeves," one older investor said, eyes gleaming, "I've never seen someone turn a game into a narrative like this. I want to invest, and I'd like to work with you on other projects." Skylar smiled, not to please, but like someone who knew her worth. "Let's talk," she said, handing him a new business card. It read, "Skylar Reeves, Creator." She didn't need Damien to open doors anymore. She was breaking them down herself. Damien watched from across the room, his heart tight with a mix of pride and something like pain. She didn't need him, and that truth made him admire her even more, and fear her just a little. After the conference, he found her in a quiet corner of the ballroom, sipping champagne, eyes distant. "You did great," he said, stepping beside her. "They hung on your every word." Skylar shrugged, but a faint smile tugged at her lips. "They're not the ones I'm trying to impress." He leaned in, voice low. "Then who is?" She looked at him, her gaze like a blade. "Myself. I don't need love, Damien. I don't need you. But I'll take what you can offer. Opportunity, power, anything that helps me build my world." Her words cut deep, but Damien didn't flinch. "And what if I want more than that? What if I want you, not as a prize, but as a partner?" She let out a dry laugh, but for a moment, her eyes flickered. Just a crack. "You have no idea what you're asking for, Damien. I'm not someone you can keep, but if you want to try, go ahead." She walked away, leaving him in the quiet tension of hope and uncertainty. Skylar Reeves wasn't someone to love, not someone to own, but she was fire, and Damien knew he wouldn't stop trying to burn with her. Chapter 6. The Woman Beside the CEO. London at night was a canvas of light and shadow, cobbled streets glistening under the street lamps, blending with the low hum of the city. Skylar stood in the grand lobby of the Mandarin Oriental Hotel, where the Ascend International Conference was being held, preparing for the final discussion panel. She wore a sharply tailored black blazer paired with fitted leather pants and her worn-out boots. Her pink hair was loosely tied back, a few strands falling naturally around her face. She didn't try to blend in with the crowd of stiff-suited executives. She wanted them to remember her, not as one of them, but as someone leading the way. Today, Skylar wasn't pitching to investors like she had in previous sessions. Instead, she'd been invited to a live debate with creative directors from top tech firms, skeptics who doubted that Eclipse, with its bold artistic vision, could thrive in the mainstream market. She stood on stage, the spotlight warming her skin, aware of the critical eyes watching. One director, Elena Voss from a major gaming corporation, spoke first, her tone sharp. "Ms. Reeves, your concept is unique, but it's too artistic, too complex. Gamers want entertainment, not philosophy. Do you really believe Eclipse can compete with simpler titles?" Skylar tilted her head, lips curling into a razor-sharp smile. "Simple is safe, Ms. Voss," she replied, voice low but resonant. "But safety doesn't drive change. Eclipse isn't just a time killer. It's an experience, a world where players confront themselves. If you think they're not ready for that, maybe you're underestimating them." The room fell silent, then murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elena frowned, but Skylar didn't stop. She stepped forward and gestured toward the screen behind her, where images of Eclipse flashed. Characters with haunted eyes, cities cloaked in smoke and neon. Players don't want the same stories recycled. They want to feel alive, and I'm here to give them that. She ended her segment with a challenge. "Ms. Voss, if you're not willing to take risks, what are you doing here?" It wasn't just directed at Elena. It was for the entire room. When she stepped off the stage, applause erupted, not just for her words, but for the way she had turned skepticism into power. From the crowd, a woman in her 50s, an executive at a major innovation fund, approached her. "Ms. Reeves," she said, voice warm but sharp, "I'd like to invest in Eclipse, and I want you to lead an independent creative project under my fund. Interested?" Skylar looked at her, feeling the weight of the opportunity. This wasn't just money. This was the gateway to building something truly her own. She pulled a black business card from her pocket, white lettering reading Skylar Reeves, Creator, and handed it over. "I'm always interested in people who think big," she said. "Call me." Damien stood at the edge of the room, his gaze fixed on Skylar. He had seen her shine before, but tonight she was a storm. Powerful, unstoppable. And he felt a painful, undeniable truth. Skylar didn't need him to succeed. She was her own light, and he, even as a powerful CEO, was merely standing in its glow. But strangely, he didn't want to control her. He wanted to be with her, not to possess, but to learn how to live like her, with passion, with honesty. Then it hit him, deep and sharp. She doesn't need me to be strong, but I need her not to disappear. Damien Cade had built his life on control, but Skylar made him want to let go, to feel, to be a man, not a machine. The evening gala took place in a grand ballroom, chandeliers casting golden light over wine glasses and polite smiles. Skylar stood near the window, looking out over the Thames, its waters shimmering beneath the moonlight. She felt a shift inside her, not just confidence, but acceptance. She wasn't running from emotion anymore. That night in the mountain lodge had cracked something open, and now she wanted to step through. Not for Damien, but because she wanted to see who she could become if she let her heart lead for once. Damien appeared beside her. No suit, black shirt with rolled-up sleeves, unusually relaxed. "You silenced the entire room today," he said, voice low. "I've never seen Elena Voss shut down like that." Skylar gave a faint smile, swirling her wine glass. "She wasn't the problem, just another person who thought I didn't belong." "And you proved them wrong," he said, stepping closer. "But I need to say something, Skylar. I looked at you today, and I realized I don't want you because you need me. I want you because I need you. You remind me that I can still feel, that I haven't completely disappeared into this world." His words washed over her like a wave, both terrifying and warm. She met his eyes and saw something she hadn't expected: raw honesty. "Damien," she said quietly, "I can't promise it'll be easy. I don't know what I have to give, but I want to try." He didn't answer with words. Instead, he took her hand and led her out of the ballroom, up to his penthouse suite. That night, they weren't rushed. Every touch, every kiss was a confession that they needed each other, not to survive, but to truly live. Skylar didn't love him, not yet, but as she lay in his arms, listening to the rhythm of his heartbeat, she thought maybe she could, and that terrified her, but it also made her hope. The next morning, she didn't leave. She stayed curled beside him, London sunlight streaming through the curtains. When he opened his eyes, she smiled. "Don't get used to this, Cade," she teased. He laughed, pulling her closer. "I don't want anyone else, Skylar." And in that moment, they were two souls, flawed, fierce, and finally ready to face whatever came next, together. Chapter 7, The Enemy in the Shadows. Skylar stood on the balcony of Damien's penthouse in London, the city lights below glittering like a sea of stars. The cold night air slipped through her leather jacket, but she didn't shiver. Inside her was a fire, not of anger, but of resolve. The Ascend conference had ended in her victory, an investment deal for Eclipse, an invitation to lead an independent project, and a solid foothold in a world of power she once believed she didn't belong to. But more than that, she felt a shift within herself. Last night with Damien, she had let her heart open, just a little. She wasn't ready to call it love, but it was a beginning, something she never thought she would want. She walked back into the room where Damien sat on the sofa, laptop open, the screen's glow casting shadows on his sharp features. He looked up, his gaze softening when he saw her. "You okay?" he asked, voice low. Skylar shrugged and sat beside him. "Better than ever, but you look like you're preparing to fight the world." He let out a quiet laugh, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just a few emails from the comms team. They want to start planning the Eclipse campaign post-conference." He paused, his eyes lingering on hers. "Skylar, you made the whole world look today. I'm proud of you." His words made her heart skip, but she only smirked. "Careful, Cade. You're going to make me blush. I'm not used to that." He was about to say something else when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. A message from Mia. "Sky, you need to see this. Now." Attached was a link to an article. Skylar frowned and tapped it. The headline hit her like a punch. "Damien Cade's secret lover, escort or creative genius." The article, posted on a notorious gossip site, accused Skylar of being a high-end escort kept by Damien to boost his image. It painted her as a gold digger using her looks and relationship to climb into the role of creative consultant. There were even photos, one taken that morning of her leaving the hotel, eyes cold, her pink hair unmistakable. Her blood boiled, but not with shame. She'd endured whispers and judgment since she was a child, when foster parents called her trash or a mistake. But this was different. This was a deliberate attack, one aimed at destroying the reputation she had just begun to build. She scrolled through the article, searching for the author's name. None. Just a pseudonym. But one detail made her freeze. It mentioned a source close to Cade Enterprises. She looked up to find Damien watching her. His face darkened. "Skylar," he said tensely, "let me see." She handed him the phone, eyes locked on his face. As he read, his jaw clenched, fury rising behind his cold composure. "This is garbage," he growled, tossing the phone onto the table. "I'll have legal take it down. It'll be gone in hours." Skylar stood, her voice calm but sharp as a blade. "No, Damien, this isn't your fight. I'll handle it." He stared at her, shocked and angry. "Skylar, this isn't a game. They're smearing you, and me. I can make this disappear." "And let them think I'm hiding behind you?" she cut in, eyes burning. "I don't need a knight, Damien. I've spent my life being labeled trash, failure, Nothing. I won't let some sleazy article take away what I've built. Damien stood and moved closer, voice low and urgent. I know you're strong, but I can't stand by and watch them hurt you. She held his gaze, her heart thudding, not with rage but with the knowledge that he truly cared. But she couldn't let him fight this battle for her. This is my war, she said, and I'll win it, my way. By the next morning, the rumors had spread like wildfire. Social media flooded with comments, curious, cruel, venomous. Skylar sat in her hotel room, scrolling through the posts. She's just a prostitute pretending to be an artist. Damian Cage sure knows how to pick his toys. Each line felt like a blade, but she didn't flinch. She had faced worse from people who were supposed to care for her. She wasn't weak, not anymore. Mia called via video, her face tight with worry. Sky, are you okay? I swear, I'm buying a flight to London to beat up every reporter I see. Skylar gave a dry laugh, her eyes steely. I'm fine, Mia, but I need your help. Find out who's behind this article. I've got a feeling it wasn't random. While Mia started digging, Skylar received an email from Kate Enterprises' media team, offering to release a formal statement to deny the rumors. She deleted it. She didn't need anyone to speak for her. She opened her laptop and began to write, not to defend herself, but to tell her story. Meanwhile, Damien wrestled with his own fury. In his temporary hotel office, he called his legal team, demanding they trace the leak. When Ethan, his assistant, called back, Damien could hardly believe the words. Lydia Kane, Ethan said. She's the source. She leaked false info to a tabloid reporter. Lydia, Damien's former lover, now CEO of a rival firm. He had ended it 3 years ago, realizing she wanted his power, not him. Lydia never forgave him. She was venomous, and now she had struck at Skylar to get revenge. Damien slammed his fist against the desk, trembling with rage. He wanted to confront Lydia, to crush her, but Skylar's words echoed in his mind. This is my battle. Skylar posted her statement on social media, a platform she rarely used. The post was short, but every word was sharp and true. I'm Skylar Reeves. I grew up in homes that weren't mine, called useless, told I'd never be anything. But I built my life, with ink, with art, with resilience. I don't need anyone to define me, and I damn sure don't need anyone lying about me. These rumors? They won't break me. They remind me how far I've come. I'm an artist, a creator, and I'm here to change the world. If you want to know who I am, look at my work, not their lies. The post went viral. Critics fell silent. Messages of support flooded in. People shared their stories, their struggles, their respect. Skylar hadn't expected it, but it made her feel stronger than ever. That evening, Damien found her in the hotel room. He stood in the doorway, his eyes full of anger and regret. Skylar, he said, voice rough, I know who did this. Lydia Kane, my ex. She did it to hurt me, but you're the one who paid. Skylar looked at him, her heart tightening. She wasn't angry with him, but she didn't want him interfering either. I don't care who she is, she said. She doesn't matter. What matters is that I spoke my truth, and people listened. Damien stepped forward, taking her hand, his voice husky. I'm sorry, Skylar. I didn't want my past to touch you. She placed a hand on his cheek, her gaze gentle but firm. This isn't your fault, but I need you to believe in me, Damien. I can protect myself. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, like he was afraid to lose her. I believe you, he whispered, and I'll be here if you ever need me. Skylar leaned into him, feeling his warmth. She didn't need him to fight for her, but now she knew. In this war, she wasn't alone anymore. Are you still following the story? Please leave your thoughts on the story in the comments below. All your comments are the motivation for us to create better stories. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you very much. Chapter 8. She wrote her own ending. Skylar stood before the mirror in her London hotel room, soft light casting gentle shadows across her face. Her pale pink hair was slightly tousled, her gray eyes sharp but burning with a fire that couldn't be extinguished. The rumors Lydia Kane had unleashed were still spreading, venomous words on social media slicing like invisible blades. But Skylar wasn't afraid. She had survived far worse. Back in foster care, when she was called trash and told she was nothing. Today she would face the world, not to defend herself, but to tell her own story. She wore a tailored black blazer, fitted leather pants, and her well-worn boots, a rebellious look infused with power. She didn't need gowns or glamour to be heard. She needed truth. Mia had helped her arrange a press conference, and it was set to take place in one of the hotel's smaller halls. Damien had protested, insisting his legal team could crush everything quietly, but Skylar had stood firm. "This is my way, Damien. If you want to stand by me, let me do it my way." He had reluctantly agreed, but his eyes, filled with worry and pride, told her he would never leave her side. Skylar took a deep breath and stepped into the conference room. Flashbulbs erupted. Dozens of reporters filled the seats, cameras pointed at her. She stood behind the podium. No script, no notes, just her heart and her truth. "I'm Skylar Reeves," she began, her voice low but steady. "I grew up in homes that weren't mine. I was told I'd never amount to anything, but I built my life. Through art, through ink, through resilience. I'm not here to refute rumors. I'm here to tell you who I am." She shared her journey, from sketching on scrap paper in foster homes to founding Ink and Iron, and now serving as creative consultant for Eclipse. She didn't avoid the hard parts. "I've been vandalized, doubted, called an opportunist, but every time I fell, I rose stronger." Then she looked directly into the cameras, her gaze unwavering. "As for my relationship with Damien Cade, yes, we're involved. That was my choice as a grown woman, and I am not ashamed of it. But I'm not here because of him. I'm here because of my talent, my work, and everything I've built. If you want to write about me, write about that." She ended with a challenge. "I don't need anyone's permission to exist. I write my own story, and I won't let anyone take it from me." The room fell silent for a heartbeat. Then a reporter stood and began to applaud. Others followed, until the room echoed with clapping like a rising tide. Skylar didn't smile. She simply nodded and stepped down from the podium, her heart pounding but lighter than it had been in days. She had done it, not for the public, for herself. Her speech spread rapidly. New articles emerged praising her honesty and strength. Eclipse fans shared her story, and those who had once criticized her grew quiet. On social media, the hashtag #Skylar Reeves began trending, accompanied by messages of solidarity and admiration from all over the world. Damien waited for her backstage, his eyes full of an emotion he rarely let show. When she reached him, he pulled her into his arms and held her tightly. "You are the most extraordinary woman I've ever known," he whispered. "I love you, Skylar, not because you need me, but because you're exactly who you are." She leaned into him, feeling his warmth, but her heart remained her own. She loved the way he looked at her, loved his sincerity, but she wasn't ready to belong to anyone. Not yet. That night back at the penthouse, Damien knelt before her, holding a simple silver ring. "Skylar," he said, his voice husky, "let me be by your side, not to own you, but to walk beside you. Be my wife." She looked at him, heart racing, and gently shook her head, her gaze soft but unwavering. "Damien, I love you. I think I do, but I'm not ready to belong to anyone. I need to belong to myself first." He smiled, though his eyes flickered with pain. "I'll wait," he said, "as long as it takes." She took his hand and pulled him to his feet. "Then stay with me, not as a promise, but as a choice, every day." He kissed her, deep and sincere, as if it were a vow spoken without words. And in that moment, Skylar knew she had found something rare. A man who loved her, not for who he wanted her to be, but for exactly who she was. Chapter 9. The New Power Woman. 6 months later, Skylar stood in her new office in Seattle, sunlight pouring through the tall windows, casting soft light on white walls adorned with bold artwork. Raven Studio, her independent design and creative media company, was the embodiment of a vision she had nurtured. A space where art wasn't just product, but storytelling, a way to challenge, to shift, to change the world. The studio's logo, A raven flying across a neon sky hung on the wall, a reminder of her journey from ink and iron to this. At 25, Skylar had become a phenomenon. Raven Studio rose quickly to prominence for its daring aesthetic and forward-thinking mindset. She collaborated with game developers, fashion houses, even nonprofits, bringing to life campaigns that were provocative, unconventional, and deeply human. Articles called her the new fire of the creative world, and international conferences invited her to speak. But Skylar didn't let fame blur her focus. She remained exactly who she was: pink hair, leather jacket, sharp gaze, and worked relentlessly to expand the studio, hiring young artists from disadvantaged backgrounds. Kids like she once was. Damien stayed quietly in the background, supporting her without asking for anything in return. When she needed seed funding, he connected her with trustworthy partners, but never interfered with her decisions. When Raven Studio faced legal threats from a competitor, he offered his legal team, but only after she agreed. He understood Skylar didn't need a hero. She needed a partner. They still saw each other, not like a traditional couple, but as two independent souls bound by something unbreakable. Some nights they sat in her apartment eating pizza and arguing about art or business. Other nights they lay beside each other in silence, simply sharing space. Skylar didn't call it love, not because she didn't feel it, but because she wanted it to be free, undefined. One day, as Skylar reviewed a new contract, Damien walked into the studio with a rare smile and a cup of coffee. "You're so deep in work, you forgot what today is, didn't you?" he asked. She frowned, looking up from her paperwork. "What day?" "The day Ink and Iron was rebuilt, a year ago today," he said, setting the coffee in front of her. "You turned it into a beginning, Skylar. You should be proud." She smiled, her expression softening. "I didn't do it alone. You were there, even when I didn't want to admit it." He leaned in and kissed her forehead. "I was just lucky to walk alongside you." Skylar looked at him, feeling a warmth she used to fear. She didn't need him to succeed, but she wanted him there. Not because she was weak, but because he made her feel even stronger. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for never trying to keep me." He smiled, eyes sparkling. "You're the wind, Skylar. I just want to keep up." And there they stood in the golden light of the studio. Two independent souls bound not by ownership, but by choice, ready to face whatever came next. Skylar knew she had found her power, not just in her career, but in how she chose to live, to love, and above all, to be herself. Chapter 10. I choose to stay as myself. The stage lights at the Young Creative Entrepreneur Awards in Seattle blazed down on Skylar Reeves as she stepped up to the podium. At 26, she stood tall and proud, her pale pink hair shimmering under the lights, her gray eyes sharp but warm. She wore a sleek black tailored suit paired with her signature worn-in leather boots, a perfect fusion of rebellion and power. In her hand was the award, a crystal block etched with her name, Skylar Reeves, Creative of the Year. The room was filled with entrepreneurs, investors, and artists, all watching the woman who had turned Raven Studio into a phenomenon in just 1 year. Skylar looked out at the crowd, her heart pounding, but not from nerves. She had come a long way, from foster homes where she was called worthless, to Ink and Iron, where she rebuilt herself with ink and art, and now to Raven Studio, where she inspired the world. She took a deep breath, her voice low and steady through the mic. "I'm not here to talk about success," she began, her gaze sweeping across the room. "Success isn't trophies or money. It's when you look in the mirror and know you've been true to yourself. I grew up with nothing, no family, no chances, just dreams and a sketch pad. But I learned one thing: no one defines you but you." She paused, her eyes searching the crowd, until they found Damien Cade, standing at the back in a black suit, his gaze filled with warmth and pride. She smiled softly and continued. "I used to think power was something you took from others, but I was wrong. Power is choosing to be yourself, even when the world tries to drag you down. I'm standing here today because I chose my own path, and I'll keep choosing it." The room erupted into applause, long, loud, and rising like a wave. Skylar bowed her head. not in gratitude, but to mark the moment she knew she had won, not just in the eyes of the world, but in the face of every fear she had ever carried. She stepped down from the podium, flashbulbs popping, but she didn't care. She only wanted to find Damien. He waited at the edge of the room, far from the spotlight, as if to let her shine on her own. When she reached him, he didn't say a word, just opened his arms. She stepped into them, resting her head against his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of sandalwood. "You saw everything," he whispered, voice rough, "and I've never been prouder." Skylar looked up at him, her eyes gleaming. "I didn't do this for you, Damien, but I'm glad you're here." They left the venue together, stepping into the rainy Seattle night. Neon lights reflected on the wet pavement, a scene reminiscent of the night they first met. Skylar took his hand, their fingers interlaced, but her gaze stayed fixed forward. She stopped beside a small park, the moonlight tracing her resilient features. "Damien," she said, her voice soft but certain, "I need to say something. I'm not your prize. I'm not something to be claimed or kept. But I'm choosing to stay with you, as myself. If you want me, I'll be your partner, not something you own." He looked at her, his eyes deep, as if memorizing every detail. Her hair, her voice, the unwavering fire in her stare. "Skylar," he said, his voice low and earnest, "no one has ever made me fear losing them like you. And no one has ever made me want to stay like you. I don't want to own you. I just want to walk beside you wherever you go." She smiled, not the sharp, guarded smile of before, but something gentle, sincere. She pulled him in and kissed him beneath the moonlight, a slow, tender kiss that said more than words ever could. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his, feeling their heartbeats align. "Then come with me," she whispered, "but don't try to run ahead. I like to lead my own path." He laughed, warm and low, and it made her heart flutter. "I figured that out a long time ago, Skylar." They walked on, hand in hand, beneath the city's glowing lights. Skylar felt a new kind of freedom, not because she had achieved something, but because she had found a way to love without losing herself. Damien wasn't perfect, but he was willing to stand beside her, to respect her, to love her as she was. A year ago, she had been a girl with the face of freedom, fighting to prove her worth. Now she was a powerful woman, not just in her work, but in how she lived, how she loved. She looked at Damien, her eyes shining, and knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, not as master and prize, but as two souls choosing each other, every single day. And as they stepped into the darkness of night, Skylar felt the world open wide. She didn't need fate to guide her. She was writing her own story. And this time she was choosing to let Damien be a part of it.